COVID-19 is a really new virus. So yes, there have been other coronaviruses before, but this particular strain is new. And so as such, there's really no kind of hard and fast science on it, because all the science is just emerging. So I can't tell you anything definite. I never can anyway, because science is renowned for its contradictions, and there are good reasons for that, but it's always impossible to say something really kind of definitely. But even more so, I think, with this, it's really, we're all in a period of experimentation. We are all kind of guinea pigs at the moment. So there's no kind of real strong evidence for anything. However, so far this year, so what are we, 4 months in, 1,924 scientific papers have been published just on COVID-19. So obviously, the scientific community are really, really on it. And there's lots and lots of research coming out. So what I will do is I'll talk generally about immune health and sensible things to support immunity generally. And I will talk a little bit about what we know, we think we know so far about specifically COVID-19, how it works, and what we might be able to do to protect ourselves or reduce the severity of symptoms if it does kind of come and get us. So I'm sure you've all heard about the cytokine storm, which is kind of the main talking point about COVID-19, and the thing that really seems to be what affects the severity of it. So, we all know some people are asymptomatic, some people are just very, very mild symptoms, and other people really get into quite a lot of trouble. So there does seem to be quite a lot of research coming out, and I'm reading a lot about, this every day. There's things coming to my attention that seems to point towards underlying inflammatory conditions like obesity, for example, diabetes, that really make COVID-19 a lot more serious for those people. So we know that inflammation is a huge thing, because we know that people with underlying inflammatory conditions, and obesity is a highly inflammatory condition, as is diabetes, and to an extent as well, high blood pressure. We know that people that have those issues seem to suffer worse. So there may be a reason that Boris was affected worse than the rest of his cabinet. I would say he's more overweight than any of the rest of the cabinet. So, that could be complete hypothesizing, but that could be one of the reasons that he was more severely affected. But, there may be other ones. So, we know that inflammation is an issue, and we know that that's something that really, if we can tackle inflammation, logically, if we apply, scientific knowledge and biochemical knowledge to it, logically that should help. So the cytokine storm, I'm sure you've all heard about, that occurs in the lungs of people that get very, very badly affected by it. And cytokines are basically inflammatory chemicals. So they're a natural part of our immune system. So when we get ill with anything at all, these natural inflammatory molecules are released, and they play a really, really important role in attacking the virus or the bacteria or whatever it is that's infecting us and getting rid of it. The issue lies when the inflammation keeps going. So what should happen is we have an appropriate immune response, we have an appropriate inflammatory response, and the inflammation is there for the normal amount of time. So what we're going to look at is, aside from supporting immunity, we're going to look at also supporting inflammation and keeping inflammation as low as possible, and that will naturally support our immunity as well. So very, very briefly, the immune system is very simply divided into two parts. So we have something called the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system. It doesn't really matter, you don't need to know about that, but what we do know is it seems to be, from what we've seen from mouse models, is that it's an inappropriate innate immune response which makes us particularly ill from COVID-19. So the innate immune response is the one that we inherit from our parents, we're born with it. It's the first immune response to step up when we become ill. It's like the first troops, you know, in the line of soldiers, they're the ones that go forward first. And it seems that it's the inability of this immune response to react appropriately that makes us get particularly seriously ill from COVID-19. So this is what we really want to focus on. We really, I mean, you know, focusing on both branches is always a good idea, but with particular regard to COVID-19, it's the innate immune response that we really want to sort of control. So I did have a train of thought going on there, but it's gone a little bit. I'm sure it will come back though. So yeah, the adaptive immune response is what we develop in response to a virus or a vaccine. So every time we get ill, the adaptive immune response is the one that has the memory and will remember and adapts itself for next time, which is why it's called adaptive, because it's constantly changing according to the kind of insults that we're living. So whether, you know, the viruses that are coming into our system, whether that's a virus or a vaccine, that's the one that's going to be alerted to that. So in terms of general immune support, I'm sure you have all seen a lot of this, because I'm seeing it literally every single day now in the newspapers, and obviously now we've got the beautiful weather, vitamin D. So this is a massive, massive one, particularly for the innate immune response. So research is coming out now specifically to COVID-19 to do with vitamin D. So it's being, I mean, it's always, we've always known, and we've known for a good few years now, that vitamin D is a very, very potent immunomodulator, which means that it modulates the immune response beneficially. You can go over the top, you can kind of go into hyperdrive, but it's quite unlikely to happen. As you know, in somebody that functions fairly relatively well, that's unlikely to happen. It can happen in people that have other underlying conditions. So you definitely don't want to go overboard, but you can't go overboard with natural sunlight. That's the good news in terms of vitamin D. You can over supplement, but you can't make too much from sunlight, because the body has kind of inbuilt response that will stop that happening. So vitamin D is a big one. And I'm delighted to see every single person on the camera has got sunshine beaming through, you know, from either a window or directly. So that's fantastic. So you should all be aiming to be getting out into the sun for at least kind of 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day. And really, you know, the first 10 minutes should be without any sun protection at all. So unless you're incredibly light-skinned, but I think at this time of the year, you know, still kind of mid-April, there's not a huge chance of burning, certainly not in the first 10 minutes. So I would suggest kind of getting out, spending 10 minutes in the sun with no protection, and then if you're susceptible to sunburn, or you have sensitive skin, then, you know, applying the sun cream at that stage. So vitamin D is definitely a big one, and the specific research around COVID-19 has showed actually that vitamin D has helped to dampen down that specific cytokine storm. So it is being used in the research, and it is coming up with really, really beneficial effects. So, you know, Public Health England actually are now saying that because everybody's being asked to stay inside and people are maybe not getting out in the sun as much as they could be, particularly vulnerable people that really can't go out, they're suggesting that everybody should supplement with vitamin D. I would echo that if you're not able to. I think if you can get out at this time of year, it's probably not necessary unless you're very, very dark skinned. But if you're vulnerable and you haven't been out, you know, since the beginning of lockdown, and there's no prospect at the moment of getting out, then I certainly would suggest a vitamin D supplement. And I think about 1,000 IUs is an appropriate sort of maintenance starting level. The general advice is 400 IUs. That's really not going to touch the edges. There's absolutely no risk of overdosing on 1,000 IUs, so that's a very safe dose. But it's good enough to kind of get your levels up and keep them up. What I would say is if that you're supplementing in drops, do be careful that you're getting the exact amount, because most vitamin D supplements, sort of, you know, 3-4 drops are 1,000 IUs. It's very easy to kind of just think up, you know, 4, 6, 8, it's all the same. With vitamin D, there's quite a lot in each drop. So don't do what my mum did and just kind of down a whole dropper full every time and end up with vitamin D toxicity. that's probably not a good thing to do. So yeah, just be aware of the number of drops that you need and don't go overboard. So vitamin D is a big one. And then all the kind of classics that we hear about all the time. So vitamin A, vitamin C, and zinc. They're the kind of three biggies that I think are always mentioned. Vitamin A is found in a wide variety of foods, both vegetarian, vegan, and animal products. So liver is a big one. Liver is probably one of the best foods, I would say, that you can eat for your immune function, because not only is it full of vitamin A, but it's also full of something called glutathione, which we'll look at in a minute. So that's, if you're fans of liver, then that's a fantastic thing to have once a week or so. But vitamin A also in all of the sort of brightly coloured vegetables and fruits, so carrots, mango, orange, red, yellow peppers, all of the kind of, orangey, carotene type vegetables and fruits. Not as well absorbed as the meat versions, so liver and eggs and beef and those kinds of things. It's a different absorption. But I think aiming for a range of both is always good. So aiming for your kind of meat vitamin A and your vegetable vitamin A is always a good thing to do. Vitamin C, we all know all about vitamin C. Again, it's being used in China, I believe, very, very high doses intravenously with a lot of success for COVID-19 patients, very ill COVID-19 patients. So that seems to be getting really good results. So that's a good one. I would suggest a liposomal, we call it, liposomal vitamin C, which is basically means that it's fat soluble, so it's better absorbed within the body. And I'll give you the name of a kind of supplement website that you can find all of these things on at the end. Zinc is always a very sort of important nutrient for supporting the immune system, and we hear a lot about it in the winter, vitamin C and zinc, and they often come combined. Aim for about 15 milligrams a day is a good dose for zinc. Which come in fairly small little capsules, so easy to take. But probably one of the major things in terms of supporting your immunity is a healthy gut. So most of our immune system lies within our guts. Over 70% is in the gut, which is a bit of an unknown fact for a lot of people. And so it's really important to keep the gut and the gut lining and the membranes that are within our gut really, really healthy. So the obvious ways to do this, and the most basic ways to do this, is to chew your food properly. Take your time about eating. We're all rushing less, I think, at the moment anyway, which is a really positive thing to come out of all of this. But just being mindful when you eat. So, making sure that you're looking at your plate before you take a bite and really sort of taking it in with all of your senses, because that kickstarts the digestion. So, seeing and smelling food is the first stage of digestion. Even before you've put anything in your mouth, we're starting to release saliva, your mouth starts watering, and that sends messages down to the gut, and everything starts kicking in. So it's really important part of eating is looking at the food, smelling the food, appreciating it even before you put it in your mouth. So yeah, slow down, eat more slowly, chew properly, especially if you're eating protein. Make sure that you're really chewing it effectively, because that's, obviously a lot of digestion goes on in your mouth as well. And think about, especially for anybody that's over 60, think about supporting your digestive capacity with things like apple cider vinegar before each meal. So a tablespoon of unpasteurized organic apple cider vinegar is a really good way of kind of encouraging the digestive enzymes to start kicking in. Probiotics as well are always, very, very helpful in terms of looking after the gut and making sure that the gut bacteria is in a healthy place. Again, all of this has caveats always, because probiotics can be problematic if there's a lot of kind of gut disruption going on. But generally speaking, for most people, a kind of, broad spectrum probiotic should be beneficial rather than the opposite. Omega-3 is a very, very important one for not only the immune system, but also for inflammation. But I think really one of the most important things, and one that's often overlooked, is sleep and rest. And, you know, to be perfectly honest, I would love to sit here and say nutrition's the answer, food's the answer, but there's never just one answer. And I think that I know for a fact that if you're eating all the right things, but you're super stressed and you're not sleeping or resting enough, you will still end up in some trouble. You know, you'll still have inflammation and your immune system won't be functioning as optimal as it could be. So we mustn't forget about things like that. You know, I think we need to take a holistic approach. So sleep is really important, and enough rest and relaxation, and sleep in a properly darkened room. So research tends to kind of suggest that 8 hours of a really dark room is really the minimum that we need to be exposed to the darkness, because that encourages the production of melatonin, and melatonin is very, very important for innate immune support. So we want melatonin. So general inflammatory support, fish oils, omega-3s, properly purified, so by the most kind of the highest quality that you can, which they're expensive, but you know, don't just go for sort of the home brand Boots type brands, because they often haven't been purified very well and they can create more kind of inflammation if they've got lots of toxins in. So really good quality fish oil. Things like curcumin, spices like that, been shown to be very anti-inflammatory. Low starch and low sugars, which you all know about from Rob, being in class. So focusing on the proteins and the healthy fats and the vegetables rather than the starchy, sugary type foods, which kind of create inflammation. And then, you know, rest, relaxation and sleep. So I just want to sort of finish off with what we specifically know so far about COVID-19 and how we can support the immune system really to help cope with that, apart from just, you know, the inflammation that I've talked about. So the most recent research that's coming out of China, India, Italy, we know that COVID-19 has these little spikes, okay, which is where it gets its name from. Corona means crown. But what's really interesting about COVID-19 is that these spikes it has are necessary for attacking the human cells. So that's what it uses to get into the human cells. But the enzymes that we have on our cells activate those spikes. So those spikes can't exist without the enzymes that we produce. And this is one of the problems with COVID-19, and it's one of the reasons it's more infectious than other coronaviruses. It's because it's activated by us, by our cells. So it's quite ironic, really, that it needs the spikes to get into us, and we are the ones that give it the spikes. So the enzyme that we have, which activates these spikes, is called furin. So one of the things we want to do is to inhibit furin, which will stop those spikes from growing up and stop it, therefore, getting entrenched into our cells. So the most up-to-date literature suggests that the following things might help suppress or inhibit furin. First one is andrographis, which is a herb. Now, andrographis has been sold out for the last 2 months because I've been searching for it high and low, but it may be back in stock now. And when this all kind of blew up, it was, you know, a lot of these nutrients are out of stock with a lot of suppliers, so you kind of have to hunt around. But andrographis is one of the herbs that has been shown in the scientific literature to help reduce furin. Folinic acid as well, so not folic acid, but folinic, which is different from folic acid. That's also been shown to help inhibit furin. Something called L-arginine, which is an amino acid, which you can also buy in supplement form, but again, you can get from protein. So ensuring that you're getting adequate protein and that you're able to break down and digest it properly will be helpful. The active component of milk thistle, which is called psilocybin, however you want to say it, but milk thistle, which is a very well-known liver support supplement, which also supports glutathione production, which I'm just about to come on to. So glutathione is basically the mother of all antioxidants. It's our internal antioxidant that we produce, and it's the main one that we need. Glutathione has been shown to specifically to support innate immunity, and has also been shown in the literature to really help support COVID-19 and help protect against it, both before infection and during infection. So you can supplement directly with glutathione as well. And again, a liposomal glutathione is the best. Pretty expensive, well, very expensive, but I think worth its weight in gold, really. It's such a really important nutrient. And it also appears that COVID-19 has a high density of positive charge. So what we want is a compound with a negative charge, your basic chemistry to help neutralize it. And one compound that has a very negative charge is called chondroitin sulfate. And there's a little bit of evidence around that in the literature, in terms of its ability to neutralize some viruses as well. So those are kind of the main nutrients that I would be looking at currently. Your general sort of immune support, so your vitamin C, zinc, A, omega-3s, and then inflammatory support, which again is omega-3, but also things like curcumin, sleep, 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 rest, rest, rest. Don't stress out. There's nothing we can do to change this. So let's just, embrace it and get on with it. Digestion, healthy gut. And then, if you're really specifically concerned about, if you maybe have an underlying inflammatory condition, or you have asthma or something else that makes you more concerned than you might otherwise be, then these really sort of specific COVID-19 compounds such as andrographis and glutathione and milk thistle, I think a good way to go for general support.